One day, while Merwan Seth was distributing prasad in the temple, a 15-year-old boy came forward and held out his hands to receive the sweets. Merwan Seth asked his name and the boy replied, Vishnu Narayan Devrukkar. What do you do? Merwan Seth inquired. I go to school, the boy replied. Where is your father? He is dead, Vishnu said. Merwan Seth looked into the boy's eyes with compassion and said, From now, I'm your father. What do you mean, Merwan Seth? Asked the boy. I don't understand. Merwan Seth smiled, handed him some prasad, and rubbed his head. The boy then scampered off. Vishnu's house was across the street from the toddy shop, and soon after this encounter, Merwan Seth decided to visit the boy's family. Vishnu's mother, a devout Hindu named Saraswati, received Merwan Seth reverently, addressing him as he entered the house as Deva, God. He, in turn, would always call her Kakubai, meaning his paternal aunt. Merwan Seth inquired about her welfare and asked, Would you cook dal and rice for me in the afternoons? She replied, With great pleasure, Deva. From that day on, Merwan Seth would go to her house every day for lunch. After a few days, he started coming at any odd time, saying, I'm hungry, Kakubai. Can you prepare something for me? The woman accepted Merwan Seth's request and felt it a privilege to be allowed to serve him. So Kakubai made it a point to always have something ready in case Merwan Seth came unexpectedly. Merwan Seth would give her money as his prasad to buy essentials, and although she did not want to accept it, he prevailed on her to do so and she could not refuse her Deva's prasad. One day Kakubai complained to Merwan, Deva, Vishnu goes to the movies every day. I'm afraid that he is associating with a bad group of boys. Please talk to him and set him straight before he gets into trouble. He will not listen to me. Merwan immediately went to the local movie theater and caught hold of Vishnu, who was about to enter with some other boys. He took the boy aside and slapped him soundly a few times. Vishnu was taken aback and said, Merwan Seth, I bought the ticket with my own money. I have not stolen anything. Why are you beating me? Did you ask me if you could go to the movies? Merwan Seth replied, Didn't I tell you that I would be your father? Why didn't you ask me before going to the movies? Vishnu did not reply, for he instantly knew that from then on he should not do anything without Merwan's permission. Kakubai was delighted with the change in her son's attitude. After a while, Merwan Seth stopped going to Kakubai's for lunch and began eating lunch cooked by Mimo. A 12-year-old boy named Madho Maruti Gauhani was hired by him to fetch his afternoon meal from his mother's house and bring it to the toddy shop. Madho was intimidated by Shirin Mai, but he became another of her unwitting spies. Every day when Madho came to pick up the food, she would interrogate him about her son's activities. Who visited my son? To whom does he give money? What does he do in the shop? Do people cheat him? Does he allow anyone to steal from him? Madho would innocently tell her everything. When Merwan Seth came home, Mimo would browbeat him over his impractical, unbusinesslike ways. Then she would turn to her husband and ask him to reproach their son about the need for running a prosperous toddy shop. To appease her, Bobo would pretend to be angry and scold his son, while making light of the affair the whole time by winking at Merwan. During this period, Mimo fell ill and Merwan Seth stopped having his meals sent from home. However, Mimo still insisted upon seeing Madho and would interrogate him. Who sends food to my son now? What do they feed him? Does he eat? And so forth. Explaining that it was usually plain dal and rice with vegetables, Madho informed her that Merwan Seth took meals from Kakubai and sometimes from Sadashiv Patil's wife. When she heard this, Mimo became displeased, stormed out of the house and hired a Tonga to Sadashiv's house. There she berated his wife Geeta, who patiently and quietly heard Mimo's long list of complaints against Merwan and his associates and activities. Geeta sympathized with Mimo and offered a sweet delicacy called Puran Puri. The dessert calmed Mimo, and she went home in a happier mood. Another person who became drawn to Merwan Seth at this time was Arjun Dagdu Supekar, 24, who owned a small tobacco shop near the toddy shop. Fond of chewing pan and tobacco, Merwan Seth became one of Arjun's regular customers, buying jarda, a strong type of chewing tobacco. He would sit with Arjun chewing the tobacco and talking to him at length. How's your business? Inquired Merwan Seth. Do you make enough money? How's your family? How many children do you want? And so forth. Arjun was deeply touched by Merwan Seth's sincere interest and sympathy, and eventually confessed that he was barely surviving financially. Merwan Seth started spending a lot of time at Arjun's shop, buying tobacco and pan for himself and others. At times he would sing the songs of Tukaram, Swami Ramdas, and Kabir, and thus Arjun, a devout Hindu, became convinced that Merwan Seth was a spiritual figure. His heart was fatally wounded by Merwan's arrow of love. Eventually, all of Arjun's family became devoted to Merwan Seth. Merwan's boyhood friend Billy was still stationed in Aden, a port along the Arabian Sea, but for some reason he did not maintain correspondence with Merwan. Within a year after leaving India, Bailey landed in serious trouble. Bailey had succumbed to all the temptations available to a young man in foreign service. He had been living luxuriously as if he were a high ranking and important officer, which he was not, and his salary could not keep up with his extravagant lifestyle. Bailey developed a serious drinking problem, frequented brothels, and found himself struggling with pressing debts. To escape his creditors, Bailey applied for a leave of 1 month, which was granted. However, the officer who was to take his post committed suicide and Bailey's leave was cancelled. In the meantime, a junior officer filed a complaint to headquarters. Bailey, in an inebriated state, insulted and behaved rudely with his commanding officer, who filed charges against Bailey for drunk and disorderly conduct. At the trial, he was found guilty, court martialed, stripped of rank, and jailed. The judge sentenced him to 2 years in prison, but for some reason, the general in charge had it reduced by 6 months. After serving his sentence in prison, Bailey was dishonorably discharged from the Navy and in 1919 returned to Pune. Bailey was a disgrace to his family. Gradually, during the course of several weeks, every former friend came to know of his jail term and none wished to be associated with a convicted criminal. No one trusted him and no one would give him a job. As noted earlier, Bailey had a hot temper. He seldom could control his anger and he would get into fights. So his relatives had no sympathy for him and he was met with cold indifference. As the months passed, he tried to atone for his previous behavior. But the Zoroastrian community's attitude did not change. He was completely ostracized in his hometown. He became extremely depressed. Finally, after having a bitter quarrel with his parents, during which they called him a disgrace, he decided to commit suicide. That same day, Bailey's brother Homi went for a drink at Merwan Seth's toddy shop. Casually, Merwan Seth inquired, "Where is Bailey these days? What has become of him? We used to ride, but I haven't heard from him in over a year." "Didn't you know?" Homi said. "Bailey has been in Pune for a few months. He was kicked out of the Navy for embezzling money." Merwan Seth looked seriously at Homi and told him, "No, I didn't know. Go bring him to me at once. I will give you a free bottle of toddy. Bring him here immediately." Merwan Seth gave Homi money for a tonga and he raced home. When Homi arrived at Bailey's room, the door was locked. Homi called out, but there was no reply. He pounded on the door and Bailey said, "Whoever is there, go away. His brother identified himself, but Belly repeated, "Go away. I don't want to see anyone. Your old friend Merwan wants to see you," Homie informed him. "Open up. Come with me, and we will have a toddy with him." "I don't want a drink," shouted Belly, "and I don't want to see anyone. Leave me alone." His brother shouted back, "Mirwan feels very bad that you have not come to see him since you have been in Pune. I'm telling you, Mirwan wants to see you. He is still your friend, you fool. You must come." He insisted that I bring you at once. "Now open this door, or I will break it down." A few moments before, Belly had been about to drink a cup of poison. He hid the poison and reluctantly opened the door. Before Belly could protest, Omi grabbed him and dragged him outside to the waiting Tonga, motioning the driver to return to Mirwan Seth's toddy shop. However, when they arrived, Mirwan Seth had gone. Gustaji was attending the shop and informed them that Mirwan Seth had just left on some urgent errand and had asked him to tell Belly to please wait. Belly described what happened next. "I had not to wait long. Within 15 minutes, I saw him coming. At the time, I was pacing outside on the road, and as soon as Mirwan saw me, he came running and took me in his arms, embracing me warmly, kissing me all over my forehead, face, and neck. Tears welled up in my eyes. Mirwan Seth embraced Bailey so lovingly as if no one else was as dear to him as Belly. Belly broke down. He had never in his life experienced such love. His family and friends had turned their backs on him, but his old friend Merwan still cared about him. He was so overcome he could not utter a word. Belly stood silently looking at Merwan's face. Merwan led him into the toddy shop and gave him a drink. They sat at a quiet corner table and Belly poured out what had happened to him. Hearing it, Merwan admonished him, "Let the past be gone. Why worry about past wrongs? Every person has done something very wrong. God is there to forgive." Belly was so influenced by what Merwan said that his depression disappeared. "Why didn't you write to me about all this?" Merwan asked. "But I did write. I wrote many letters, but you never replied. Then I heard that you were following spiritual masters and thought that perhaps you had left Pune." "Don't bother trying to explain," Merwan replied. "I know it all. I want you to come and see me every day. I promise everything will turn out all right if you do so." Belly agreed. Merwan made Belly understand that he would never be left helpless again. Belly realized his old friend had saved his life. He stopped thinking about committing suicide and regularly began visiting Merwan at the toddy shop. Merwan again became Belly's pillar of strength and source of love. Later, it was discovered that the letters Belly wrote had been hidden away by Mimo. She did this because she was afraid Merwan was thinking of going to Aden to see Belly, and she did not want him to go far away, especially to a foreign country. Mimo honestly admitted her fault and Merwan forgave her. After this incident, Belly remembered Baba Jan's forewarning. "You will have to wait for 5 years. He tells me 2 years? No, I will not allow 2 years. So come after a year and a half." He then understood what she had meant. He had been sentenced to 2 years in prison, but the general had reduced it to a year and a half. Similarly, he remembered that Merwan had foretold that something terrible would happen if he left for Aden and had wanted his orders changed. Gradually, Belly learned of his old friend's spiritual attainment, although he erroneously attributed it to Merwan's deep religious beliefs and daily prayers from childhood. Shortly thereafter, Belly was to discover how wrong his conceptions were. Later in 1919, Merwan Seth happened to visit Bombay. At this time, another young Persian named Khodadat Farhad Irani was living there. Khodadat had a burning ambition to become an actor and obsessed with this idea. He went from one theater and film production company to another for auditions, but no one chose him for a part. He became disappointed and depressed, finally contemplating suicide. While Khodadad's inner turmoil was occurring, Mirwan Seth was walking through the city when he came across the dejected young man sitting on the sidewalk. Seeing him, Mirwan Seth stopped and inquired, "Who are you? Why do you look so sad? You look as if you haven't a hope in the world." Khodadad retorted, "What business it is of yours, sir? Who are you anyway?" Mirwan Seth smiled and said, "I am the owner of a film company in Pune, and I'm here in Bombay to interview actors. Would you happen to know of anyone who would like to work in a film company?" The young man couldn't believe his ears and excitedly said, "Yes, sir. I've been looking for such a job myself for the past 3 months." Mirwan said, "Fine, I will hire you. Can you come with me now to Pune?" Khodadad agreed immediately. Mirwan took Khodadad to Pune. But when they arrived, he said, "I want you to work in my toddy shop. Your work here is just temporary, of course. My film company is in the final stages of formation, and as soon as it starts up, I promise you will work there." Khodadad agreed. However, by being constantly in the spiritually intoxicating atmosphere of Kasbapet, the young man soon forgot about his previous acting ambition and became totally dedicated to Mirwan Seth's activities. Later, Mirwan Seth nicknamed him Nervous because at the slightest mishap, and even more so in Mirwan Seth's presence, young Khodadad would appear uneasy, anxious, and nervous. There is another version of how Nervous came into Mirwan Seth's contact. Bailey has written that he first met Nervous on a visit to Calcutta, where Nervous was employed as an actor in a Parsi theatrical company at the famous Corinthian Theatre, run by the Madan Theatre Company, which also made films. When Nervous heard about Mirwan Seth, Bailey recalled, he got so anxious that he wanted to resign from his job immediately and return with me to Pune. It was only after I convinced him that I would talk to Mirwan Seth and seek his permission first that he agreed to wait. I took his address and told him I would be sending him a reply within a week. Mirwan Seth agreed to the request, so I sent a telegram to Nervous asking him to come to Pune. Nervous resigned from his job in Calcutta and came to either Pune or Bombay, and from then on remained a staunch disciple. Mirwan Seth's frequent visits to Sakori expanded his circle of contacts. Upasni Maharaj, like Papajan, would often mention Mirwan to his followers. One of Upasni's disciples was a very special woman named Gulmai, the wife of Kai Khushru Sarosh Irani, a prominent businessman and civic leader in Ahmednagar. Gulmai was then 36 and the mother of 4 children. Married at an early age, she had encountered many problems in her life and prior to meeting Maharaj had been depressed and unhappy at her joint family home. Mirwan's uncle Masaji was employed as a clerk at a liquor store owned by Kai Khushru in Ahmednagar. The owner's sister, Gulnar, suffered from a skin disease, and Masaji told her and Gulmai about Upasni Maharaj and Mirwan Seth. Gulmai's real name was Gulu, but she was respectfully called Gulmai by Upasni Maharaj and later by Baba as well. Her sister-in-law Gulnar was the mother of Sarosh K. Irani, one of Meher Baba's later disciples. During August 1919, Gulmai's younger sister Sunamasi, 35, and her husband Kai Khushru Behram Irani, 39, came to Ahmednagar from Bombay to visit their relatives. Kai Khushru Masa, as he was known, was a successful jeweler and an ardent lover of God. About 8 years before, he had been to Shirdi for Sai Baba's darshan. It was at Shirdi that he had learned of Upasni Maharaj and gone for his darshan at the Khandoba temple. Later, he became a regular visitor to Sakori, where he met Mirwan Seth and immediately recognized the divinity manifest in him. Kaikhushru Masa tried to persuade his sister-in-law Gulmai to accompany them to Sakori, but she refused because she felt her husband would not like it. When Kaikhushru Masa, Sunamasi, and Gulnar were present before Upasni Maharaj, they spoke to him about Gulnar's rash and then about Gulmai's devotional nature and her family problems. Gulnar explained to Sadguru, "My sister in law is very depressed and alienated. She faces oppressive conditions in her husband's joint family household. Could you draw her to you like you have drawn us?" Upasni replied, "Do not be so worried about her. I will do the same for her as I have done for you. You and she, as well as the whole family, will come to me. Have faith and come to Sakori as frequently as you can. Your skin disease and her depression will disappear." Upasni then told them that they were welcome to stay the night in Sakori, but Gulnar wanted to return to Ahmednagar. However, on their way back, they were stranded near a river which had flooded. Thus, instead of being in the ashram of a God conscious master, they had to spend the night in a donkey stable. When Gulnar returned, she was happy that she had met the impressive Sadguru, and she told Gulmai about the trip and urged her to make it a point to meet Upasni Maharaj soon. Gustad ji had been at Sakori on this occasion and had accompanied the group back to Ahmednagar on his way to Pune. He told them about the Aarti to Upasni Maharaj that Merwan Seth had composed, and Gulnar, wanting to recite it, requested that Gustad ji write it down. However, he did not remember the entire Aarti and told her to get it from Merwan Seth. Later, when Gulmai's husband Kai Khushru went to Pune, he met Merwan Seth, who wrote out the Aarti for Gulmai. Suna Masi longed to take her sister to Sakori before she and her husband left for Bombay. For 2 weeks, she pleaded with her sister to visit the Sadguru, but Gulmai refused. Finally, Gulmai agreed and was accompanied by Kai Khushru Masa and Mr. and Mrs. Bekhuda Faridun Irani, acquaintances from Pune. They reached Sakori around noon and saw Upasni Maharaj's humble thatched hut situated among thorny, scraggly bushes with a small temple nearby. A few paces away was a peepal tree under which two young Persian men were sitting. Gulmai approached them and Kai Khushru Masa and Bekhuda started a conversation. Bekhuda's wife whispered to Gulmai, "Do you know who that is?" Gulmai shook her head. "No." "Do you know Sheriar Mundegar of Pune?" Bekhuda's wife asked. Gulmai said, "Yes, Sheriar is related to my father and came to my wedding in December 1896. Bekhuda's wife explained that is Sheriar's son, Merwan, and the other is his business partner, Behram. They own a toddy shop in Pune. They are Maharaj's Bhakts, devotees." Gulmai replied, "I have heard that Sheriar has a son who is insane and abstains from eating meat, fish, and eggs. Is he the same son?" Bekhuda's wife said yes. "However, wait till you hear him sing. He sings beautifully." "I would like to hear him," Gulmai said. "We will ask him to sing later." In the meantime, Merwan Seth had been explaining to Kai Khushru Masa and Bekhuda how he had met Upasni Maharaj. He was telling them about Upasni's great fasts and penances when the Sadguru called to see them. All went inside Upasni's hut. They bowed to him, and Maharaj asked Bekhuda and his wife where they came from, to what family they belonged, etc. They answered him. Then he remarked sternly in Marathi, "This family life is all filth." The actual word Upasni Maharaj used was most likely the Marathi equivalent of shit. Upasni would often use swear words and abusive language. Cursing or vulgar language was symbolic of his work of annihilating sanskaric bindings, the grossness of a person's consciousness. Lifetime after lifetime is wasted in this way. If one wants to purchase wheat but inquires at a cloth shop, the shopkeeper will say no grain is available here. You can only buy cloth here. Similarly, you will only get from here whatever I have. Upasni Maharaj asked each about matters pertaining to them personally. As soon as Gulmai had entered his hut, she was astonished to find that the near naked master was the same figure who had appeared to her recently in a vivid dream. She listened intently to his words as he spoke of God, the spiritual path, and the need of a perfect master. Gulmai was impressed with Upasni Maharaj, and she immediately felt comfortable in his presence, as if she had found an old friend. Gulmai spontaneously said, Maharaj, you have what is not available elsewhere. I want only that. Upasni then told them to have their lunch and rest. They were to meet him again in the afternoon. As they came out of the hut, they found Merwan Seth waiting for them. He helped them take their parcels to the Maruti temple nearby and then said that he would return at 3 o'clock to take them to Upasni. After lunch, Merwan Seth arrived and narrated how he had met Babajan and Sai Baba. When Merwan Seth started to take the group to Upasni, they told him that they had heard that he sang beautifully and asked if he would sing one song. He politely changed the subject and took them to Upasni's hut, where they sat under the peepal tree together. Upasni called each person individually. Gulmai's turn was last. As she approached the door, conflicting emotions overwhelmed her. She wondered how to unburden herself to the Sadguru. Merwan Seth, who was standing near the entrance, urged her to go inside and reveal unreservedly whatever she had in her heart and mind. Gulmai, after gaining her composure, wondered how Merwan Seth had known what was going on inside her. She entered Upasni's hut but was at a loss as to what to say. As soon as she started to speak, tears came. Gulmai had other miseries besides her unhappy home and alienation from the Zoroastrian community due to her intense interest in spirituality. She had developed pustules all over her body and was afraid it indicated some disease. She had thought of telling Maharaj about it but was embarrassed. However, when he pointedly looked at her from head to foot, she told him of her ailment. Maharaj assured her that it was nothing serious and would disappear. Then Upasni called Durgabai and said, This lady is miserable. She is unhappy at home and has an affliction because of her unhappiness. Explain to her that I know everything, so there is no need to tell me anything. Gulmai fell at Upasni Maharaj's feet and begged him to accept the surrender of her body, mind, progeny, and possessions. She burst into tears again as she narrated how difficult her life had been. Finally, she beseeched Upasni to allow her to stay with him permanently at Sakori. Upasni Maharaj explained that she could not do so. Those without worldly attachments pursue puja and sadhana's forms of worship and spiritual disciplines. It is not new to them. It is thus easy. But to be in samsar, the world, and belong predominantly to God and be totally devoted to Him is the highest form of worship. To suffer between the urge of God and the drag of life, to balance longing for God with the observance of household duties, to remain untouched like oil in a sea of activities, is much more helpful for attaining the highest spiritual aim. You and I have past connections. You are deeply connected with me spiritually through previous births. I have had my nazar on you for a long time. Finally, you have come. Maharaj added, Your Zoroaster is here. I am closely linked with Zoroastrians, and in the future, they will flock to me in large numbers. He told her many other things and then concluded, Go back to your husband and family. Nagar is quite near. Nagar is a shortened form of Ahmednagar. Whenever you feel is necessary, you may come here. You are welcome here. You may come alone also. You may see me as often as you need. However, a continuous stay with me in this rustic area as you desire is not advisable considering your present circumstances. Do not worry about anything. My nazar sight is on you. Gulmai accepted Upasni Maharaj's instructions and came out of the hut to find a group sitting under the peepal tree listening to Merwan Seth tell stories about Sai Baba, Baba Jan, and how Lord Ram's birthday was grandly celebrated at Sakori. Gulmai sat down and listened. Meanwhile, preparations had been started for Upasni's evening arti. In the small temple near the Sadguru's hut, a devotee was adorning photographs of Sai Baba and Upasni Maharaj with flowers and incense. Soon after, the whole group participated in the ceremony. The Ahmednagar group left Sakori by Tonga in the evening and came to the railway station at Chitari. Merwan Seth and Behramji accompanied them by bullock cart. As the baggage was being unloaded, all sat among a grove of trees. Merwan Seth pulled out a book on God and started to read. Calling Gulmai, he handed her the book and told her to read it at home. As they waited for the train to arrive, Merwan Seth distributed chapatis and chutney that Durgabai had prepared. During the train ride, they heard a melodious voice from the adjoining compartment. Merwan Seth was singing a ghazal. He was fulfilling the group's earlier desire to hear him sing. At Belapur, he and Behramji got off. Merwan Seth told them that he and Behramji were going north to Nagpur to see Tajuddin Baba, whom Merwan said was also a great master. Some time passed and Gulmai again visited Upasni Maharaj. After taking his darshan, she offered puja to him in a devout manner. Upasni inquired about her health and then said, since Sai Baba dropped his body, his devotees, both Muslim and Hindu, have been transferred to me. They expect my attention, so at times I have to beat them. Many Zoroastrians also come. Those from Pune have a temple. Merwan is one of them. He is an Irani like you. He is always doing something or other here. At this time, Merwan Seth was standing near a well with Sadashiv. When Gulmai came to get a drink of water, he inquired how she was doing. Then, to win her over, he remarked to Sadashiv, how sweet is this lady's nature. How different my life would have been had she been my mother. With these compliments, Merwan Seth snared her heart. Gulmai returned home the same day. During her frequent visits with Upasni Maharaj over the years, Gulmai never gave up hoping of living in his ashram at Sakori. While there, she and Merwan Seth often met. He revealed to her his spiritual experiences, which convinced her beyond doubt that he was in fact the chargeman, spiritual heir of Satguru Upasni Maharaj. During one stay with Upasni Maharaj for 12 days, Gulmai had to bear austere hardships and was even severely slapped and beaten by Maharaj. Explaining to her what she was undergoing, Merwan Seth assured her, "You're very fortunate. By withstanding these tests, you are the first woman to have been granted the grace of a perfect master such as Upasni Maharaj. You passed through these hardships brilliantly. It is a blessing if a Sadguru beats a person. You are indeed blessed." Baba Jan also beats people with a stick. Before Gulmai left Sakori, Upasni Maharaj told her, people like holy places where there are big and beautiful temples, important and influential persons throng there. This is a common occurrence. But to come to this barren place with love and devotion and serve the Master wholeheartedly with full faith is the real thing. What is there in Udwara? There is fire, but here burns the living fire. True pilgrimage is at the feet of the perfect master. During 1919, Merwan Seth initiated the building of a small temple in Sakori for performing Upasni Maharaj's Aarti. He himself would defray the expenses of Bhandara's feasts held there, as would Gulmai. Other temples were constructed later in Sakori as Maharaj's fame spread. A rich Maharaja built one magnificent Hindu temple there. But the distinction of funding the first temple in Upasni Maharaj's honor rested with Merwan Seth. Gulmai's devotion to Merwan Seth deepened with each encounter, and later she and her husband and their sons Rustam and Adi and daughters Piroza and Dolly dedicated their lives and property to his cause. Merwan later called Gulmai his spiritual mother. While Gulmai and a few others gradually recognized Mirwan's spiritual attainment, most in the Zoroastrian community scoffed at the notion that this young Irani had become a prophet. They included Mirwan's younger brother, Jal, 17, who likewise did not believe in his elder brother's advancement and dismissed Merag as being insane. Jal knew a Hindu guru outside of Pune named Siddharud Swami of Hubli village, reported to be a Sadguru, whom he would occasionally visit. Siddharud Swami, 1836 1929. Among those considered to be his followers were several Indian Maharajas. Indian national leaders such as Lokmanya Tilak and Mahatma Gandhi also sought his blessings. But Jal would ridicule those who believed his brother should be given such spiritual respect. One day everything changed. Merwan Seth was at home talking casually with Jal, Jamshed and Belly. He looked at Jal and stated, "Brother, I'm God." Jal burst out laughing and mockingly exclaimed, "You? God? Merag? You're no one but a madman. How can a man be God?" "Believe me, I'm truly God," Merwan Seth replied. Brazenly, Jal retorted, "This is nonsense. I don't believe a word you say, Merag." Then Jal challenged his elder brother, "If you're God, you must have powers. Prove to me that you're God." Merwan Seth agreed to the challenge and said, "I will place a burning coal on the palm of your hand, but you won't feel any pain. Do you agree to this test?" Jal arrogantly replied, "I'm quite prepared. Let me see what sort of God you are." Then he added, "If my hand burns and I feel pain, your delusions will be shattered once and for all. I don't want to hear you ever repeat that you're God." Merwan Seth smiled and sent Jamshed to the kitchen to bring the Zoroastrian afarganu, a pot in which burning coals are kept during prayers. He then instructed Belly to remove one of the red hot coals with a pair of tongs and place it on Jal's palm when instructed. Jamshed was told to bring the ink pot from a table in the next room. Merwan then told Jal to extend his right palm, which Jal did. Jamshed held the open ink pot in his hand. Merwan once again asked Jal if he wished to withdraw his challenge. Jal declined. Merwan Seth held Jal's wrist and told Jal not to move his hand. Merwan signaled Belly and he placed a small piece of burning coal in the center of Jal's palm. Jal, his face drained of color, behaved as if there was no pain and for some moments did not move his hand. The skin started to burn, but Jal did not feel any pain. He stared at his hand in amazement. The moment Jal slightly moved his hand, Merwan Seth picked up the fiery coal with the bare hands and placed it in the afar ganu. Merwan ordered Jamshed to take Jal outside in the compound and pour the entire contents of the ink pot onto Jal's palm. Then take Jal to Dr. Saldana, their family doctor, for bandaging. Belly had noticed that the moment he placed the coal on Jal's palm, Merwan Seth's face had also turned pale. Merwan clenched both hands tightly as if he, himself, were undergoing the pain and suffering. This was the real reason Jal had felt no pain. Shireen Mai was cooking in the kitchen but was unaware of what had transpired. When anyone asked about the bandage on Jal's hand, all agreed to say that whilst Jal was lighting a match, the matchbox had accidentally caught fire in his palm. One version of this incident states that Jal had to be hospitalized for several days at Sasun Hospital for treatment due to the seriousness of the burn. Merwan Seth visited him often, and Jal's heart was profoundly touched by the love his elder brother showered on him. Later he confessed, Merog, my ego is smashed. You are truly God. I was a fool to doubt you. Forgive me. Mysteriously, whenever Merwan visited Jal in the hospital, or Jal was in his presence, the excruciating pain in Jal's hand would completely disappear. But as soon as Mirwan left, the pain would return in its full intensity. As Jal related years later, when the coal came out, I became unconscious. I was taken to hospital, but during those moments when the coal was on my palm, I didn't feel the pain at all as if it was a piece of paper. And that was a miracle. Baba used to visit me in the hospital. The pain was terrible, and a huge blister formed, and it had to be cut with scissors. During the weeks it took to heal, I was wondering why did I allow Baba to test me by burning my right hand unnecessarily. I couldn't understand it. And then I dreamt of Baba. I had had one or two dreams of Baba before in visions of bright light, and it penetrated to my heart. He came walking in my dreams. I had some experiences in the daytime also, and I felt his divinity. Footnote 124. The Awakener, Volume 13, Number 1 and 2, page 38. When Jal was brought home, Mirwan praised him for his strength and courage in withstanding the awful pain for his sake. He then embraced him and asked, Now will you renounce the world and join me permanently? After deep thought, Jal told his brother that he was prepared to carry out his will and follow him. For the rest of Jal's life, when new persons came into Mirwan's orbit, Jal would show them the scar on his hand and narrate every detail of the event that made him realize his brother was indeed God in human form. Gustaji, Slamson, and Nervous were now working and managing the toddy shop in Kasbapet, and Mirwan Seth was not involved much in its business affairs. He still oversaw their work and made certain everything was spotlessly clean and that the toddy was of good quality. He had made it a rule for everyone from the Kasba Pet group to take Baba Jan's darshan at least once a day, individually or as a group. After closing the shop, Gustaji and others went home only after having Baba Jan's darshan, even if it was after midnight. Gustaji had been given a small room at Baba House where he rested at night. In November 1919, Upasni Maharaj telegraphed Sadashiv to bring Mirwan Seth to Sakori to join him on a trip to Banaras, where a Shraddh was to be held in honor of Sai Baba. A Shraddha ceremony is a Hindu rite performed a year after the death of a parent or revered ancestor, as a way to honor and remember them and to give them thanks for their guidance. Sadashiv had returned with his family from Banaras just 5 days before. He knew it would be difficult to obtain permission from his uncle to leave his business responsibilities again. Sadashiv was at a loss as to what to do when Mirwan Seth suggested a plan. Sadashiv's apartment was on the second floor of his toddy shop. Late one night, when the family was asleep, Sadashiv tossed his bedding roll out the window to Mirwan Seth and snuck out of the house. Together, they went to the railway station and caught the train to Sakori. Before leaving, Sadashiv woke his uncle saying he was going out and would be back soon. Later, he wrote his uncle, informing him where he had gone and why. At Sakori, Sadashiv asked Upasni why he was going to Banaras. Upasni replied, There will be a large gathering of Sai Baba's devotees there, and Sai himself is going to preside. This answer surprised Sadashiv, who said, How can Sai Baba preside over this occasion when he died more than a year ago? Upasni did not elaborate. Upasni left ahead of Mirwan Seth and Sadashiv on a different train, although in Banaras he stayed at the Mahadev Shiva temple with them. Preparations had started for the performance of Mahayajna. a large sacrificial fire. Several thousand devotees of Sai Baba from all over India were gathered, and there were 700 of Upasni's own followers surrounding him. 111 Hindu priests congregated to perform the great yajna. The meals were specially prepared by Brahmins, but Merwan and Sadashiv were instructed by Upasni to oversee the food arrangements. Both would shop daily in the market and purchase all that was required for enormous meals. In the center of the large pandal tent where the fire ceremony was to take place, a large painting of Sai Baba was hung and garlanded. When Sadashiv saw this spectacle with Sai Baba's picture in the central place, he realized why Maharaj had told him that Sai Baba would preside. The great ceremonial fire burned continually for 11 days, and on the 12th day, a feast for Brahmins was held. By that time, as many as 12,000 Brahmins had gathered. The food for all was ready before noon, but when the Brahmins sat down under the large pandal for the meal and saw the painting of Sai Baba, some raised an uproar, exclaiming, "We cannot join in the feast of a Muslim." Sai Baba was a Muslim. Upasni Maharaj, who himself was a Brahmin descent, prevailed upon them, saying, "Forget your religious prejudices and opinions and partake of the food." Sai Baba was above religious distinction. He was for you Brahmins as well as for the Muslims. But the Brahmins would not listen, and even the Brahmin priests who performed the Mahayajna joined their protests. Then Maharaj told the priests, "I promise to give every one of you dakshina of 15 rupees instead of 5. Now eat and enjoy the feast." Still they refused, continuing to object vehemently to the picture of a Mohammedan master, and shouted, "Take that painting down. Why is this yajna dedicated to him? Why is Sai Baba being honored in our temple? If that painting is removed, we will share in the feast. Otherwise, we will not eat." The pandemonium lasted for 2 hours. Upasni could not persuade the Brahmins to share in the feast, and he refused to have the painting of Sai Baba taken down. In the end, Upasni instructed his devotees to go to the banks of the Ganges river and to strike empty cooking oil tins to call for the poor to gather there. Merwan Seth and Sadashiv, joined by Upasni's several hundred devotees, served the food to the tremendous crowd that came. Amazingly, although nearly 15,000 poor people were fed, a considerable amount of food was left over. Upasni Maharaj then directed, "Throw the remaining food into the river." This shocked the Hindu priests, who saw bucket after bucket of food being flung into the river. They approached Upasni and begged his pardon, saying, "Great one, we are now ready to partake of the feast. Do not waste the food, forgive us." Upasni angrily retorted, "You call yourself the Pandits of Kashi?" A Pandit is a learned Hindu priest or scholar. The ancient city of Benares was called Kashi when Buddha resided there over 2,500 years ago. "What can I say about you priests? There is nothing in Kashi for you, and there is no food left either. I forgive you, but you will not partake of the feast. He, Sai Baba, whom you call a Muslim, is the real Pandit." Upasni then angrily sent the priests away and bid his followers farewell. He instructed Merwan Seth and Sadashiv to go to Jagannath Puri while he returned to Sakori. Puri is a major place of pilgrimage located along the sea coast of eastern India. It is famous for the great Jagannath temple there, one of the most visited temples in India, entry to which is barred to non-Hindus. The temple is dedicated to Jagannath, considered a reincarnation of Vishnu. Jagannath is also another name for Krishna and Dattatreya. The town of Jagannath Puri dates back to ancient times and is considered by Hindus to be one of the four holiest places in India. It is believed that the sacred relic of Buddha's tooth was preserved there until it was finally transferred to Ceylon. It is also claimed that Jesus, as a young man, stayed there during his travels in India. Arriving in Jagannath Puri, Merwan and Sadashiv went to the temple's Dharmshala. Observing that Merwan was wearing pants instead of a white dhoti and had a kerchief tied around his head, the temple priest asked Sadashiv curiously, "Who's your friend? He does not appear to be a Hindu." Sadashiv replied earnestly, "His name is Jagat Narayan, and he is a Pakka Hindu, pure. He has accompanied me from Banaras and we are going on pilgrimage to other holy places." The priest made no further inquiry and registered them in his record book as Jagat Narayan and Sadashiv Patil. Residence Pune. Jagat Narayan literally means the Lord of the universe. Little did the priest know who his guest really was. He was in fact Jagat Narayan, the Lord himself. Because of Merwan's appearance, it was inconceivable that anyone would mistake him for a Hindu. But this innocent priest did not object. The Lord stayed at his temple, meant only for Hindu pilgrims, to the good fortune of the priest. The priest served them food, and afterwards, Sadashiv and Merwan Seth went to the seashore to bath. They then took darshan at the temple, gave a generous dakshina to the priest, and took a train to Kharagpur the following day. In Kharagpur, Merwan Seth and Sadashiv met several of Upasni Maharaj's devotees and visited the Harijan neighborhood where the untouchables lived. Maharaj's disciples, led by Namdev Mahar and his wife, welcomed Merwan Seth to their humble huts. Afterwards, Merwan Seth and Sadashiv departed for Nagpur. While in Nagpur, Merwan Seth explained to Sadashiv, "I am also connected with Tajuddin Baba. I want you to take 3 or 4 of Upasni's devotees with you to Waqi Sharif and meet Tajuddin. Take flowers and fruits with you. Give Tajuddin my salutations. Although I cannot go, however, when Sadashiv and the group reached Tajuddin's headquarters, they found that the master had departed just an hour before. Disappointed, they went back to Nagpur and explained this to Merwan Seth. The next day, Merwan Seth instructed Sadashiv, "You must meet Tajuddin. I am sending you again to Waqi Sharif. But this time, leave an hour earlier so you don't miss him." But again, Tajuddin had just gone. For 4 days, Merwan Seth instructed them to go to Waqi Sharif, and each time Sadashiv and the devotees of Upasni Maharaj missed Tajuddin Baba by minutes. Each day they were sent earlier and earlier, but each time Tajuddin had slipped away ahead of their arrival. Finally, Sadashiv complained to Merwan Seth of his unwillingness to go back again. It was a long Tonga ride of 11 miles each way. Merwan insisted, "Go for a 5th time, and I assure you, he will be there. Tajuddin will be waiting for you." This time the master was present. After Sadashiv and the others bowed to him, Tajuddin inquired, "For 4 days you have been put to much trouble, but today I was waiting for you to arrive. Do you know why I was not here?" Tajuddin then showed them a photograph of Merwan Seth, remarking, "This heavenly rose was calling me for the past 4 days, but he was also sending you to me. Today the heavenly rose did not call me, so I am now able to meet you." When Tajuddin Baba told Sadashiv that Merwan Seth was calling him, he did not mean that he and Merwan Seth had met physically. Tajuddin was not in Waqi Sharif because he would constantly travel about the area. Sadashiv related a similar incident regarding Tajuddin Baba that occurred a few years later after Meher Baba had set up his own ashram. Baba had sent his disciples, Ghani, Wajifdar, and Sadashiv to meet Tajuddin. And upon meeting the three men, Tajuddin gave each a photograph of Meher Baba, telling them, "Worship this photograph of Meher Baba." They then bowed down and said prayers before Baba's photograph in front of Tajuddin Baba. On occasion, Meher Baba would give a disciple or devotee a photograph of one of his masters to meditate upon. Small Khurshid was given a photograph of Tajuddin Baba to meditate on. Gulmai had photographs of Baba Jan and Upasni Maharaj in her prayer room. From Nagpur, Merwan Seth and Sadashiv left by train to meet Upasni Maharaj at Sakori again, and later returned to Pune after being away for a month. After they had been some days in Pune, Upasni Maharaj again called Merwan Seth and Sadashiv to Sakori. From there, they travelled together to Nasik. The Sadguru did not take any of his other devotees with them. He, Sadashiv, and Merwan Seth walked the distance of 4 miles from the city of Nasik to a forested area where they spent the night at a Mahadev temple consecrated to the greatness of Shiva. The next day, Maharaj sent Sadashiv on an errand back to the city to buy some save and chivda, dry chickpea snacks to eat. Maharaj remained behind so that he could work on bringing Merwan Seth further down from divine consciousness to gross consciousness. By the time Sadashiv returned with the snacks, it was dark. Upasni asked him, "Were you afraid while walking through the jungle?" Sadashiv replied, "Yes, I was somewhat frightened." Upasni remarked, "I was just behind you. There was nothing to be afraid of." Then Upasni's appearance changed and he became gloriously radiant, declaring to Sadashiv, "Remember this always. Merwan will make the whole world dance to his tune. And if you stick to him, you will never have anything to fear." They again slept in the temple, and the next day Upasni took them to the village of Gavalwadi, where they climbed the Bhorgad hill. Upasni showed them a cave on the hill where, long before he had met Sai Baba and become God realized, he had sat for nearly a year repeating God's name and fasting without food or water. While the three sat in the cave, Merwan Seth composed and sang the following ghazal dedicated to Upasni Maharaj. O Guru Upasni Maharaj, you are the divine beloved. O Guru Upasni Maharaj, your love is reality. You neither ate nor slept until you found God. O Guru Upasni Maharaj, you became all-loving Yasdan. By becoming a lowly toilet sweeper, you became supremely supreme. O Guru Upasni Maharaj, you are matchless indeed. You have the face of Allah. You have the form of Ram. O Guru Upasni Maharaj, you are the image of brilliance. You are God incarnate, the Lord of each house. O Guru Upasni Maharaj, you are the Emperor of the two worlds. Huma is mad in your love, a beggar at your feet. O Upasni Maharaj, Huma entreats you to bestow your divine love on him.